If you look throughout the years, I think there's a lot of players who probably would not benefit from having that spotlight.
He said he first tried cocaine at a party during his rookie year in 1981, and by his third season, he had moved up to crack.
Considering the off-the-field issues and the extracurricular activities a lot of players of yesteryear would get into, well, I think it's safe to assume that the existence of social media might have caused them more trouble than good. So today, let us take a look back at 10 NFL stars who would have never survived in today's social media era. Lawrence Taylor. There is absolutely no chance that LT, no matter how amazing of a football player he was, would be able to survive this era. Because as talented as he was also a grade A dirtbag, as evidenced by the horrendous legal trouble that he got into after his playing days were over. Even dating back to before he caught those charges following his retirement, the good people on social media would have still absolutely hated him for all the trouble that he got in by both committing dirty plays on the field and getting in trouble off of it. After all, he was one of the hardest playing and hardest partying players that the league has ever seen. The people of New York would have had a field day snapping photos of him blacked out and harassing some woman at the bar. And all the other NFL fans tired of Taylor destroying their favorite teams would have jumped at the opportunity to trash him in 2 seconds. Next thing you know, Taylor would be live on his own account and running his infamously big mouth. Yeah, this would not have been pretty. Joe Namath. I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that Broadway Joe Namath would have struggled to make it during the social media era. And no, it's not merely based on his behavior towards sideline reporter Susie Colbert that the nationally televised cameras caught. Though I must admit, if he was acting that way on national TV, you'd have to imagine he was getting up to no good in the New York bars during his heyday. After all, this is a guy that took it upon himself to open his own club in the Upper East Side called Bachelor's 3. That was home to not only big names in sports, politics, and entertainment, but, also the mob. Yes, the NFL eventually forced Namath to divest his ownership of the club due to its ties to organized crime, and the incident was sort of brushed aside. But look, if that happened nowadays, it would have been a non-stop whirlwind of social media controversy. No doubt about it. Namath also might have ultimately ended up wearing thin on his supporters with his antics. I mean, we've seen a number of players today get clowned on for their fashion choices, and Namath was pretty ahead of his time. And in true Broadway Joe fashion, he had to take it to a whole new level by wearing a fur coat on the sideline instead of the team-issued apparel. Just imagine a player trying to pull that off in today's NFL. Not only would Roger Goodell have him jailed, social media would be all over them. Mark Gastineau. Mark Gastineau is a hell of a defensive end for the New York Jets in the 1980s, the New York Sack Exchange era. And during that time, it seems he truly lived it off the field as well, like many New York athletes of the time. But Gastineau was none too good at staying out of trouble. Ahead of the 1983 season, he got arrested and charged with assault at Studio 54, a popular New York nightclub. He also fell out of favor with some of his teammates in 1987 when he immediately crossed the picket line during the players' strike. As explained by his teammate at the time, Dave Jennings, we expected it from Mark. He always put himself in front of the team. He's a very selfish individual. Yeah, I feel safe to assume that Twitter would have loved to pile on Gastineau for this too. Yeah, his entire existence would have been challenged if he had to play nowadays, no doubt about it. O.J. Simpson. Well, unfortunately, this one kinda goes without saying. But O.J. Simpson would have ran into serious trouble long before he ultimately did if he played during the social media era. And not just because of the bizarre social media presence that he's since developed in his old age, but rather because prior to his now infamous trial, he was allegedly behaving extremely erratically. And look, thousands of camera phones with access to the internet would have likely exposed the psychotic episodes that Simpson was having. In some ways, it might have actually helped, if the public had more visibility into how Simpson really was outside of the public eye. Then maybe he might have been held accountable sooner. And hey, who knows, maybe tragedy could have been avoided. Mark Chmura. Mark Chmura was a great tight end for the Green Bay Packers during his prime. He made it to 3 Pro Bowls and won a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, he also liked to live life on the wild side, as evidenced by his indiscretion at a high schooler's after-prom party. That nearly resulted in him being sentenced to up to 40 years in jail. Never mind the specific incident, because I really don't want to get into the details of a case from 20 years ago, but I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that a 31-year-old man who spent his free time partying with high schoolers might have been engaging in enough unsavory behavior to get in trouble during the social media era. To be honest, this one kind of feels like a foregone conclusion based on what we know about him at this point. Sebastian Janikowski. Sebastian Janikowski was a bit of an enigma. He was born to Polish nationals who divorced when he was young, and during his early years, he was one of the top young soccer players in the country. His father, however, remarried to a U.S. citizen, which set Sebastian up to move to America when he was a teenager, where he dominated the local soccer scene and was also introduced to football. Janikowski became a legend in Florida for his booming kicks and parlayed his leg strength into a scholarship to Florida State, where he kicked for Bobby Bowden and earned All-American honors. It was also at Florida State that he started to get into the kind of trouble that really would not have boded well for him nowadays. He was notably arrested at a nightclub and even got caught allegedly trying to bribe an officer into letting his friends off the hook. But shortly after he was acquitted, he and two friends got arrested in Tallahassee on felony possessions of GHB. Yeah, not great. There were rumors at the time that all this controversy was going to affect his draft stock, but considering he still went in the first round as a kicker, I think it's fair to say that the damage was minimal, especially compared to what it would have been nowadays. Dion Sanders. At the peak of his powers, Dion Sanders was one of the most universally recognized athletes in America. He was flashy, outspoken, and insanely talented. And not just at football, but also at baseball. He famously played a World Series game and an NFL game in the same week once. There's a reason he was regularly referred to as primetime. The man was just must-see television, no matter what he was doing. But if you ask me, the dosage of Dion, so to speak, was the exact perfect amount. You see, if Sanders was given a social media platform during the apex of his notoriety, the public would have turned on him very quickly. Don't get me wrong, it was entertaining to see him in spurts wearing flashy jewelry and high-end suits in the locker room after games, but there's only so much boasting and hot-dogging that people can actually take. Not to mention that his outspoken faith in contradictory lifestyles would have been further exposed and probably would have rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Michael Irvin. The 1990s Dallas Cowboys have become sort of a mythical group. There are a bunch of guys who were just insanely talented and achieved the highest accomplishments on the gridiron, winning 3 Super Bowls, all the while going just as hard off the field as they did on it. Dallas star wide receiver Michael Irvin was the perfect microcosm of this team. He was famous for going out to the club until 6 a.m. and basically rolling up straight to practice and still torching everyone on the field. This high-flying lifestyle, however, was not without incident. In 1998, he was alleged to have assaulted one of his teammates, offensive lineman Everett McIver, with a pair of scissors after he refused to let Michael cut him in line at the barber shop. Because it was the 90s and it happened for a team owned by Jerry Jones, this was comfortably swept under the rug. Jones brokered a settlement between the two, and McIver never pursued criminal charges against Irvin. Irvin was also a notorious bachelor, for a lack of a better term. And, well, he spent a lot of his free time doing bachelor-type things, you know, like hanging out at strip clubs and crazy parties. Yeah, social media would have mixed with that hobby like oil and water, let me tell you. I mean, we've seen how it has affected him during his post-playing career. He's ended up under the microscope a handful of times for allegations of sexual assault and harassment. Something that I imagine might have come up had there been more visibility into that kind of thing during his playing days. Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp is no doubt one of the most accomplished defensive football players that we've ever seen. He won a Super Bowl, Defensive Player of the Year, and has been named to 6 All-Pro teams and 7 Pro Bowls. Sapp was dominant for such a long time that he was actually named to 2 separate NFL All-Decade teams as well, both the 1990s and 2000s. All of that success, however, was not without a cost. Being a superstar athlete for so long played a role in Sapp developing a truly massive ego, and simply put, the man thought he could do whatever he wanted, both on and off the field. During games, he was liable to deliver a dirty hit pretty much at any time, and it didn't stop there. He was notorious for unsportsmanlike behavior that could, at times, result in his team being penalized, and he often fought with both opposing players and his teammates alike. No matter how much Buccaneers fans appreciated Sapp's insane output, there would have surely been a faction that would have grown weary of these antics, especially when they were coupled with his bad behavior off the gridiron, which also would have gotten much more attention. Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon built a bit of a reputation for himself as one of the few true bad boy quarterbacks in the NFL. And he really set the tone for that shortly after breaking into the league. At his first official Bears team function, he showed up to the event with a beer in hand, flaunting his newfound freedom after playing his college ball at BYU, where that surely would not have flown. Honestly, it'd be kind of hilarious to see how the internet would have reacted to something like that today. There'd be a group of frat bros applauding him and the holier-than-thou types admonishing him. This was the first of many of this kind of incident that McMahon would be involved in, and honestly, one of the least severe. He notoriously once mooned the journalist asking him about a glute injury, and allegedly made some off-color comments to reporters about the women of New Orleans. McMahon was no doubt entertaining both on and off the field, but he really would have struggled to stay on it with the increased scrutiny that social media would have put on him. But which of these NFL players do you think would have had the hardest time surviving in the social media era? Was there anyone that we may have missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.